Hi again, everybody. This is Jamie Allison, and this is the Big Idea, Big Moves podcast. This is the destination for high performers. We talk to people from different genres, different niches, just people doing really cool things in their space, and people that have a message, a journey, a story, just things that we can listen to. First of all, to be inspired, but the other part is to be able to take some bits and pieces out of those things and hopefully apply them to our own lives as well. And I know today is one of those because it's a very broad topic that I think has applications to pretty much anybody listening today. And so I'm really happy to have Lucille Ossai today. She is a communications trainer, speaker, advisor, author, and multi-award winning blogger as well. She helps professionals, entrepreneurs, leaders amplify their communication skills so that they can increase their influence, excel in their careers, which I'm sure most of us want to do, and boost business results if that's important as well. She's the best-selling author of Influence and Thrive: How Professionals, Entrepreneurs, Business Leaders, and Corporations Use Effective Communication Skills to Get Results. Global Gurus ranked her as number 5 on their list of communication professionals in 2022. So again, we were talking just before we came on, Lucille. I'm sure things are very busy for you, so thank you very much for taking the time today. Really appreciate it.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here, Jamie. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, when you look back at your career so far, you studied London School of Economics. You were probably in more traditional business related roles, and then you've moved into communication, consultation, and coaching. Why that path, I guess, for you? Where did that come from as you were kind of defining yourself that way?
Yeah, it's really, really interesting because it wasn't really planned. It was definitely not planned. Just like you said, I completed a master's at the London School of Economics, and then my first job was a trade promotion role.
Yeah.
At the embassy of Sweden and the Swedish Trade Council in Nigeria. But what my life has been that over the years I've been very interested in communication, and I was that child who always used to read a lot, but I was shy and quiet. But I just noticed that when I started in the business world, I just started really getting interested in communication. My first role was a communication role as well. So I had to do a lot of writing. I had to interact with professionals and diplomats, Swedish diplomats from abroad. And a lot of writing was part of the role. So I had to really tweak my writing skills and my influencing skills and persuasion skills and all of that. But it wasn't until a couple of years later, I took a career break. I know it was quite early to become a stay-at-home mom for 4 years. And that was the pivotal moment I just became obsessed with communication. I just started researching a lot. I always wondered why things were not right when leaders communicated, or when there was a crisis, a corporate crisis, why they didn't get their messaging right, and so on and so forth. And I just decided that, I just needed to do something about it. So I started a blog, impulsively, about 10 years ago, and started blogging monthly on communication, started researching. And the more I blogged, the more interested I became in communication, and the more insights I started to share. And then the blog got quite a lot of recognition, but I was just doing it to just share my passion and to also increase my knowledge in the field. And then fast forward a couple of years later, I landed a role at the Lagos Business School. It's one of the top business schools in Africa, actually, and globally ranked. And guess what? So the role was a communications role. So it was a communications coaching role. And then over the years, I just built the knowledge and I started interacting with a lot of executives. Executive MBAs, and I started doing seminars and workshops, and I started really realizing that communication and effective communication was a problem, was really a problem. And it was a problem that MBA students face, and experienced executives face, even leaders face, and entrepreneurs face. And I started to just becoming very interested in how to help them and how to devise ways and strategies to just help them to tweak their communication skills so that they could go ahead and do those amazing things in their businesses and careers. And it
Yeah.
just took off from there. And then I wrote a book on it, and it just,
Yeah,
and
and it
yeah,
exploded after that. I
yeah,
mean,
it
obviously,
just, yeah,
you've done
exploded.
so many things, and I just wanted to touch on one thing there that you talked
Um,
about, influence and how that's actually
yes.
connected to your communication skills, and I'm sure that's why your blog and some of those things have become very popular, because I
Mhm.
think most people want to be able to increase their influence and some of those things. What is that connection do you see? How does your effectiveness in communication impact your ability to influence people?
That's fantastic, fantastic question. Well, here's the thing. Yeah. People need to feel connected to other people. Yeah. And once we can make the connection, and we can make ourselves relatable, and we can basically paint a picture of the ideal situation for the next person, we
Yeah.
easily buy into that vision. Yeah. So it doesn't really matter what you do. It doesn't really matter what field you work in. You could be an accountant, you could be a CEO, you could be a business developer. But if you need to sell your ideas, or if you need to communicate in a way that will get massive support for your goals, for your budget, for your vision, followership, and all that, I realized over the years that it really boils down to how you communicate. So just knowing the tools to communicate with and how you communicate. And that could cross across how you communicate non-verbally, how you communicate in virtual interactions, just like we are communicating now,
Uh-huh.
how you communicate one-on-one, how you speak persuasively to move hearts and coax people to action, and how you write. Writing is a very, very big deal. It's really a big deal. I know there tends to be a lot of books and a lot of resources and trainings on speaking, but I would really like to see a bit more emphasis placed on writing, because it's people might forget what you say except the recorder, but when you write something, it's almost words on marble. Yeah, it's just something you can refer to time and time again. And I just realized that if you were able to communicate in a very persuasive way through whatever mediums, then you are likely to get the support you want. And
Mhm.
it's also a fantastic way to set yourself apart from your peers, and to really get the support from the C-suite, to get support from entrepreneurs, even pitching, when you're pitching your product and so on and so forth. You need to know how to communicate, to touch hearts, yeah,
Mhm.
and to move minds in your favor. And I've often heard, Jamie, that people, because they're people, they tend to make decisions based on emotion, and then the rationale lies those decisions with
Yeah.
logic. So get
Right.
to their hearts first. I know sometimes you think it's all the facts and the figures and all that, but get to their hearts first, and paint a picture of how the world would be beneficial for them using your solution, your idea, your formula. And then you just go in for the persuasiveness, and then tweak your skills, you tweak your speaking and tweak your writing. And there are some elements that you can deliberately adopt that will make it easy for you to have a compelling argument. Yeah.
Yeah.
With the right emotion, with the right credibility, and so on and so forth. And it just becomes easier to get that impact. And it really doesn't matter where you're from. Like I'm from Nigeria, I'm
Yeah.
African.
Yeah.
I'm African. I'm from Nigeria. I'm based in Lagos, Nigeria, and you're from the United States. Effective communication is effective communication.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it really doesn't matter who you are, and you really shouldn't be limited by geography, or your location, or your background, or whatever education or lack thereof. If
Yeah.
you are able to communicate persuasively, yeah, you will be able to get results. And on the corporate level, effective communication, and there's a lot of research that has proven this as well. Effective communication leads to increased employee engagement,
Mhm.
which in turn it leads to a whole range of positive business results, yeah, from higher productivity to financial performance to extra profits. Profits for shareholders, to the happiness at work, to different things. So that's basically a strong business case to take your communication seriously.
You know what? I love that you talked about how it is a tendency for individuals getting a message to
Mhm.
first have that kind of the heart emotion piece, and
Yeah.
then if you're sold on that part of it, then everything after that is being able to justify it to yourself and other people by the facts. And I think a lot of people listening will probably really connect with that, especially entrepreneurs and others, about usually when you come together with a presentation, they're coming together with what are
Yeah,
all the facts, what are all the trends, what are all of those things, but maybe missing some of the piece around how do you tell the story, how do you connect people
absolutely.
to the story. Do you see, maybe I'll ask on the don't say negative side, but on the side where if people are making mistakes on some of these things, do you see some standard mistakes that people are making that that are kind of either easy to correct or things that people should be aware of when they're communicating?
Absolutely. I think it's better for me to break it down into different groups. So
Sure.
you have one-on-one and you have non-verbal communication. Yeah. We often think that, it's not really important. We can just be ourselves and, we should be comfortable and authentic. But there are certain body language cues that we could display that unfortunately could make people see us in a negative light. Yeah, and all that. So if I were to have this conversation with you, and I'm here, I'm doing this, and I'm doing like, yeah, Jamie, it's really nice to be here, and I'm really really happy to be here, and it's been a fantastic day. You would see the drop in energy. You would not feel
Yeah.
connected. You would not feel engaged, and you probably want this meeting to be over as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
just sitting up upright, and looking at the eye, mimicking the eye contact. I'm looking directly into the camera. I'm not looking at my picture here. Yeah. There's a connection that will keep the conversation going. So just little tweaks. When it comes to speaking, just ensuring that we know exactly what we want to say and that we are very, very clear on the point we are making. I'm connected to a fantastic gentleman called Joel Schwartzberg. And I'm reading his second book, and it's called Get to the Point. And the entire book is based on how to identify your points, how to champion your point, and elevate your point so that you get the results that you make. So you need to be very clear about the points you're going to make. So even if it's a pitch, it's a presentation, are you going to inform somebody, or would you like them to do something or feel a certain way so that some things can change? You have to be clear about the point that you're going to make. Yeah. Then when it comes to writing, again, short, simple, and clear with a very, very strong call to action. So there are different, shall I say, hacks that we can all use that will tweak our communication and make us more compelling. And the beauty about communication is that it doesn't have to depend on your skills or lack of. Yeah. Effective communication and superb communication can be learned.
Interesting that simplicity, I think, is the one thing that a lot of people do lose and assume that you have to be very verbose and all of those things, and a
Right.
lot of times it's actually the opposite to get your message across. And it
Mhm.
ties into a little bit, I mean, you were talking about how things have become very international now. I mean,
Yes.
you mentioned that we're talking in very different parts of the world, which
Yeah.
is one of the I think coolest things about kind of what we
Yeah.
can do now. Um, is there any are there any things that are different? I mean, you talked about
Yeah.
how you maybe structure things are the same. Are there
Yeah.
things that you have to we've got listeners all over the world.
Yeah.
Are there things that you do have to be aware of, or things that might be slightly different depending on your connections
Mhm.
internationally?
Absolutely. And this is another really, really great question. This is another fantastic question as well. Yeah, because when you're communicating with people of different cultures, you need to be very, very careful not to assume that there's a standard way that will be acceptable to the other party. Yeah. And this becomes extremely important for nonverbal communication and nonverbal cues, because a gesture I may make here might be perceived a little wrong way by somebody from a different culture.
Hmm.
So what I usually advise is that if you're going to be doing business internationally, across regions and all that, and if you're lucky to have a face-to-face or an in-person engagement, then before you do your preparations and before you travel, please take some time to find out from the organizer just what the cultural norms are and what you should avoid. It's a very simple question. Don't
Hmm.
just assume. Yeah. Don't
Yeah.
assume that eye contact is necessary and then you go to maybe the Southeast Asia where eye contact, direct eye contact might not be taken very, very favorably out of
Yes.
respect for
Yes.
someone of the higher stature, for example. So you just need to find out and ask questions, and that would really help. That would help when you're speaking face to face, and
Mhm.
that would help when you're speaking in a group. If you want to do business, perhaps in certain cultures, you just don't start with business. You start with asking about their families, for example. You
Right.
start with a preamble, to break the ice. So you need to find all those things out. Now, when it comes to writing, it becomes a little bit easier because
Mhm.
they tend to be there tends to be a sort of standard norm that people would expect for professional communication.
Yep.
So what I always suggest is that when you're communicating with people you're unfamiliar with, err by being cautious. So go for a more formal tone than an informal tone. Yeah.
Yep.
So if I were to reach out to you, Jamie, maybe to find out about the possibility of me getting on your podcast. So I would say, for example, good afternoon, Jamie Allison or Mr. Allison. I hope no. I would like to inquire, about the possibility of appearing on your podcast, etc. I wouldn't just say hi, Jamie, or yo, Jamie.
Yep.
Just
Yep.
because I think you are from the United States and you're a little bit easier to get along with. So
Yep.
there are standard norms that you would expect to adhere to. And as the relationship becomes a bit more relaxed, more relaxed and more familiar, you can change this tone and all that. And then in some cultures, for example, in my culture, Nigeria, we're very big on titles. Yeah,
Yes.
we're
Yes.
very big on titles and so on and so forth. And we could have professional titles like a PhD, we could be called professor or doctor. Then we could have local titles like chief and so on and so forth. So
Right.
if you want to reach out to me, I would prefer to be addressed with. Would I prefer to be addressed by maybe Lucille Ossai or Dr. Lucille Ossai or
Yeah.
Professor Lucille Ossai or Honorable or Chief Lucille Ossai? You wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Subtle things could make a very, very big impression and could cause disrespect if not done the right way. So generally for international communication, I just say, just err by being cautious, be a little bit more formal at the beginning and don't take anything for granted, don't assume things, ask lots of questions because
Yeah.
what that communicates to the second person is that you're willing to learn and you, out of respect, you want to make a good impression. And people just, they just like to be treated with respect. They
Yeah.
like to be treated with respect. And that's a fantastic way to break the ice as well.
Well, I mean, that's great advice. I mean, a lot in there and packaged in there, but I think wow, great stuff. The other thing you mentioned earlier is the one thing that's I think if you're an introvert, you may think, oh, this is more of a challenge for me than other people, or it's something that's scarier for me than other people. Um, are there things that you think is there anything different that you would say to somebody who's introverted and concerned about, especially maybe face to face, and how I go about
Yeah.
doing that to make sure that I can leverage and influence people?
Okay. I'm an introvert.
Yeah, me too. Yep.
That's what I was knowing when you were doing that.
Yeah.
And when I say this in class, especially when I'm doing my lectures and sessions, sometimes I hear gasps. Yeah, I hear
Yeah.
gasps, and people are like, "No way!" And those who know me know that I'm an introvert. But because I know how important it is to be able to communicate well and to connect well with people,
Mhm.
there are certain things that I do deliberately when I'm in public that I have to be very consistent with. Yeah. And then for people who are a bit concerned, I would just say if you try to focus on the other person, so that's a fantastic hack as well. So networking and all that, instead of focusing on yourself and then all those nerves come in, you just focus on the other person, you ask intelligent questions, and then really show that you're interested, display active listening, repeat or paraphrase what you've just heard. That makes you approachable, and that's almost the secret to making you having what's the word, charisma.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's really, really strange. It's really, really strange because people love to talk about themselves. Yeah,
Yeah.
they love to talk about themselves and what they're doing and so on and so forth. But here's the thing: you cannot passively listen. You really have to be invested in listening. And then I think also for introverts, and I'm speaking from personal experience, there has to be, you need to know what your limits are. So I wouldn't go to a networking event and expect to be on in full force for 1 hour, I'll be exhausted.
Yeah.
I'll be drained. I'll be exhausted. My limit will probably be like 30 minutes. And I need to tell myself, reframe my thinking. Okay, I'm going in for 30 minutes. I'm going to try to connect and meet a lot of important people. And after that, I'm out and I'm going to retire, to recuperate, to recharge. And that's what I do. And I always ask myself, what will I like to get out of the interactions? And perhaps I just want to connect with people and all that. And I think people really appreciate it when they feel you feel invested in their stories, in the potential of having to collaborate and all that, as opposed to you just going in and just everything being about yourself, what you're doing, and all that. So I think that's a fantastic way. Then if we bring it back to the corporates, to work, there are just little things that you could do, even as an introvert, that would also put you in a good light. Yeah, because introverts sometimes they need that extra time to analyze and process things before they speak, which is fair enough, But if you can make one point during meetings, yeah, it could be maybe after everybody has spoken, if you need a lot of time to gather your thoughts, or it could even be just summarizing the points that you've made or everybody else has made, or just finding out what the next steps are. Just starting small. Tell yourself, I'm going to make one comment, one suggestion. I'm going to speak up once. Yeah. But you make sure that it is done well and it is very, very clear. You will be remembered. Yeah. Even after everybody has spoken. Oh, like, oh yeah. So if everyone has spoken and you have nothing to say, and it's important for your visibility to speak up, you just say, okay, I would like us to summarize. I would like to summarize all the points that have been made. 1, 2, 3. Jessica said this. John said this. Jamie said this. And if you don't, if that is even a challenge, then you could just keep an eye on the timer. Like, great work. I appreciate all the suggestions. We're running out of time. Could we please wrap up and just talk about something and all that? But take an active part, because unless you start to communicate, unfortunately, your great ideas will not be heard. You may be passed over for promotion, and people, frankly, including bosses, would not be convinced that you have what it takes to handle challenging assignments. But maybe that's what you actually want, but you haven't shown yourself or made yourself visible. You haven't advocated for yourself. You haven't asked for that assignment. Then it becomes difficult for people to do. So little things you could do over time make a very, very big difference to how you're perceived, even as an introvert.
Yeah. Even as an introvert. And I think probably, the difference is huge for somebody like that who maybe hasn't kind of used some of those tactics before. I think that's fantastic. The one thing I'm going to ask you, this is a different type of question, I guess, is that, you talked about how important connection is in communication, and that's one of the drivers. One of the things you see, I think, a lot of now is there's a lot of division in things and a lot of very differing opinions in the world and in between people and things like that, and even workplaces can be a little more difficult right now because there seems to be more of a divide instead of less, and less connection instead of more. Any thoughts on how we might overcome some of that, or ways that personally and professionally might be important to make sure that we start to build some of that back and maybe bring a little more connection into things through communication?
I think it's important to give people the benefit of the doubt, and not to be too quick to judge, and not to be too quick to succumb to biases. I know it's quite difficult and all that. So, for example, if we are colleagues and I've had a cordial relationship with you, and then I receive an email and you're like, Lucille, please send the report at 4 p.m. and the tone is off. And I know that's not how you are usually. Instead of just getting defensive and irritable, I would probably pick up the call. I was like, oh, Jamie, I got your email. Is everything okay? Would you like to discuss it? I'm ready to help, and so on and so on. Because people go through a lot of things that they may not be able to reveal. So on a personal level, that is it. And I think when it comes to groups of people, and that's why we talk about inclusion and diversity and so on and so forth, it's really important. And I know this is quite difficult, but it's really important, again, to give people the benefit of the doubt, and not just to assume that minorities cannot communicate properly because they speak with accent, or or females might not be ambitious because they're quite comfortable in their own zones, and so on and so forth. And just being open, I think that is key. And another thing I also have found out in my work is that you can disagree with somebody without being disagreeable. Yeah. So you
Yeah.
can oh, I respectfully I disagree. I hear what you're saying. You validate, because everybody has an opinion and everybody's opinion is valid. So you can just say, oh, you shouldn't feel that way. But guess what? I do feel that way. Yeah. So you can't come and tell me how I should not feel. But it's a different conversation if you see that, okay, I understand that this is a testing situation. I understand that this is a sensitive situation and all that. I may not be able to relate, but I do appreciate you sharing and all that. Is there any other way that we can discuss this, or is there a compromise, or is there something we can do? And if it's not, we just okay. I wish you well. Unfortunately, it won't work out this time. But I do wish you well, and you maintain the relationship. So if something happens the next time, it's not awkward for either you or the other person to approach the other person and say, hey, let's think about, collaborating on this project, or, would you like to discuss a certain situation? But if you make up your mind, become judgmental, and then go gun ho, yeah, and all that, then you close that opportunity. And then it becomes very awkward if that is a colleague with whom you have to work with in the future. That's where you get all the tension, and all that. So I think just giving people the benefit of the doubt. So it's something I'm trying to do, especially on LinkedIn, because I get occasionally very unprofessional contacts. And initially, I used to be very quick to block.
Yeah.
I know, it's not my proudest, moment. I used to be very quick to block. But now I tend to take a bit more time. I'll just say, oh, I'm not comfortable, with the way this is going, or this is not very professional, or I appreciate it if you would just get it. And sometimes the other person, and I found out that this happens with foreigners as well. The other person will like, oh, I'm sorry, okay, that's fine, and that's a potential relationship saved. I may or may not do business with that person, but it's ended on a nice cordial note. But of course, if the person crosses the line and you keep communicating and keep saying that this is uncomfortable for me, I don't appreciate that, and then that's what the block button is for. Yeah. That's the reason it's there. But I think generally, and that would help if you're working in a multicultural environment, because people's beliefs are different, maybe different, their outlooks may be different, their backgrounds may be different. And because you are the majority, doesn't mean that you override the valid opinions and expressions and experiences of the minority. So it might sound a bit simplistic, but I think just being open, being flexible, and just giving people the benefit of the doubt. Let them prove you wrong, or prove you right, or whatever the case may be. I think that would really help, especially for leaders, for supervisors, for CEOs, and all that. And I wouldn't want to mention any names, but there's something going on globally about some layoffs. Certain CEO in the tech industry could have handled it much better.
Yes, I think I know who you mean. I think I know who you mean. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you're right. I think you're right that it seems like in many ways we're defaulting the other way rather than doing a much better job. And so hopefully that person or people maybe listen to you over the next little while. So one thing, we ask every guest that comes on, Lucille, is, and we have had so many great kind of actionable things in the conversation today. So thank you for that. Maybe just to kind of tie a bow on some of it is just that if there are 2 or 3 things, if people are just listening today and they're starting to think about, okay, you know what, I want to do a better job at being able to communicate or influence people. Are there a couple of quick things that you think, or things to focus on that, to leave the listeners with as, a couple of action items they could do themselves?
So let me leave the beautiful audience and kind listeners with my 3 rules of effective communication. Perfect. And these rules form the foundation on which you can build your communication skills. So rule number 1, always consider your audience. Yeah. So always consider who it is you're going to be communicating with, because the preferences may differ, the priorities may differ, and so on and so forth. So the way you would probably communicate with me would be different from the way you communicate with President Biden if you
Sure.
got a one-on-one with him.
Sure.
It will differ, yeah, we know. So consider your audience. The second thing is what I call the three beacons, to prioritize the three beacons. Keep your communication simple, keep it brief, and keep it clear. So simplicity, brevity, and clarity. You cannot go wrong with that, especially being brief. You know, if you're going to be doing a pitch, that's why pitch competitions, you have like 2 or 3 minutes, and sometimes elevator pitches and so on and so forth. Really, really important. The third beacon of clarity is a little bit different from simplicity. When you are clear in your communication, you usually communicate what you would like the audience to feel, to think, or to do. So there's a call to action you must include. Otherwise, it's a so what. Fantastic, wow, brilliant, then nothing gets done. Yeah. So keep your communication simple, brief, and clear. Rule number 2. And then rule number 3 is feedback. You know, as much as possible, ask for feedback and then give feedback. Yeah, if you're a leader, please give feedback, because it's very awkward for your direct reports to keep on asking you what you think, how they perform. It's very, very awkward. So give feedback. And if you ensure that your feedback is has 2 components, it's timely, yeah, and it's factual. So timely, please give it as soon as you can. Even if it's unfavorable, please give it as soon as you can. And factual, based on what you know. So if you don't have a complete picture, just say, at this time, I don't have the full picture, but this is what I do know. And then give the feedback based on that. So again, very, very simple, 3 rules. Great. Audience, speakers, feedback.
Perfect. And so, you know, I'm sure people are listening and wanting to make sure that they get more, I think, over the next little while. So, Lucille, what are the best ways for people to be able to follow you and maybe buy your book, you know, or at least even connect with your blog? And yeah, there we go. That's it right there. So let's make sure that people can connect with that. So what are some of the best ways to do that?
Okay, so the best way would be LinkedIn. I'm there every day. Well, virtually every day on LinkedIn. So just, you know, look for me, Lucille Ossai, or my website, lucilleossai.com. So LucilleOssai.com. So all the information is there. So
perfect.
Those are the 2 best ways.
We'll put those in the show notes too, so that people, if you didn't get that, click right through, and we'll make sure that we have a quick and easy way to be able to get all of that, and buy the book for sure, because you know, this is just this is just a little bit of some of the great information. I think you know, you've shared a lot of really you know, important information, but also some actionable stuff that people can take away, which is great. Oh, and to the audience, if you haven't hit subscribe on the podcast, do that now. We have great people every week, just like Lucille. So so make sure that you do that. And otherwise, again, thanks for sharing so much great information with our audience today, Lucille.
Absolute really pleasure. I appreciate you being inviting me on the show. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you.
To everybody else, we will talk again on Big Idea, Big Moves.